Dude,
He's
Joe,
saying your editing's ass, Evan.
you sound like the voice in my head.
Ass. The voice in your head just go ass, ass, ass,
Actually, yeah,
ass.
kind of, yeah.
default setting.
That is, yeah. You're listening to a special episode of Contesting Wrestling because this particular episode is a personal hell that I've built out of bricks made of my own failures. We recorded our episode about John Cena.
I didn't.
This is ultimately better because now, like, Betsy gets to be here. But, like, yeah, we recorded an episode about John Cena, like, some amount of time ago. Time has stopped meaning anything to me on a personal level since we started this podcast. And I just, through an amazing series of decisions, accidentally completely deleted it from existence. So
we wanted to make sure he just couldn't see the file, but as it turns out, all that was a dumb joke, and he actually deleted it.
And yeah, just if you were getting ready to tweet that joke at us, don't, because a lot of people already did.
Unless you have a lot of followers, in
Yes.
which case, put us in your mentions at all.
So
At Contesting W on Twitter.
Over and over again.
At
Make
good
the
old
joke.
BR.
Yes.
Make the joke every day if you want.
So I got to watch these matches again, and we get to delve into the remarkable world of John Cena, a guy who I understand at the time there was maybe some sort of a meta commentary on, like, white suburbanites appropriating black culture, but in 2020 it just reads like racism to me.
All right. Well, my name is Doc Diamondfire. I've been in pro wrestling for about 11 years or so. I really need to get a start date because I'm a little fuzzy on it by now.
All those concussions.
I've been lucky enough not to have any concussions that I know of. I've never been fuzzy. I've never really seen, like, flashes or stars. Also, whenever I've wrestled, I've tried to wrestle a very safe style, which,
Only took both your knees.
yeah. But I can think well. Anyway, these days I do more commentary and ring announcing, although I am available for wrestling and whatever
Thinking
you need.
is pretty good for those things.
I really do like thinking, and I like talking using my thoughts, which is why I'm on a podcast.
I like counting.
All right, and
Hi, it's Betsy Ross. You can follow me on Twitter at good old BR. You can follow me on Twitch at Over Here Counting.
That's counting.
I am also available for ref bookings.
I'm Dr. Ben Abelson. I think for a living at Mercy College and think at my students.
He doesn't do it well, but I mean, he managed to get a living off of it.
Hey,
That is the real definition of rhetoric, is that you are rhetorically thinking at people uninterested in their contributions.
yes. Well, you did only get that professorship a couple years ago, so it's like if you're an RPG player, it's like going through a class change. You get to keep a bunch of the skills you used to have, but all of a sudden you're level 1 again.
Yeah,
amongst your peers.
well, actually, the full-time job I ended up getting was, well, actually, I shouldn't say.
It's like when you're in Final Fantasy IV and Rydia grows up and she gets all those cool summons, but she loses, like, her white magic skills.
Yeah, she just can't use them anymore. It's not part of the class.
So Ben can't heal his wounds anymore. He just bleeds forever and ever.
And that's what getting older is like.
I mean, I do think that teaching and doing my own philosophical research are at cross purposes to some degree. Mm-hmm. Figuring out how to make the ideas digestible to students who are new to the topics, and then trying to dig really deep into them and come up with more complex responses to philosophical ideas and so forth that would be interesting to my colleagues are very different kinds of skills.
Yes, this is true.
I don't know what he said, but he's single, ladies.
Speaking of, hey, Ben's a real catch. I'm going to
Yes,
say
that's
that on
true.
this podcast right
No,
now.
no, he is. I'm giving him shit,
I
but
know,
he
I
is single, ladies.
Speaking of being good at things that are arguably at a cross purpose, this is a real fucking stretch. But, all right, John Cena. I'm going to take... this is my stab in the dark as to why fans don't like John Cena. I'm going to guess that it is that I have the same basic problem with him that fans do, which is that John Cena, the whole idea of his character is to have it both ways, because John Cena presents as the underdog, presents as the beleaguered guy who everybody's out to get him, and he's just like fighting and working hard to do his thing. And also, it seems to be presumed that John Cena will win every single match.
He kind of nailed it.
Cena wins, LOL.
Yep.
And the thing is that makes him an incredibly polarizing character, because some people buy into it completely and are totally cool with someone like that, with a Superman kind of character like that.
Yeah, kids love him.
Yeah, children love him.
And the other half of the fan base, mostly older people, longer time wrestling fans, hate him. And so, in a lot of ways, he kind of paved the way for Trump in that,
Yes.
whether you love him or hate him, you're paying attention to him, and that serves his purposes.
Oh, I don't pay attention to Trump. I mean, I pay attention to, like, the important thing he does, but I don't get caught up in his stupid tweets because it's besides the point. Like his stupid tweets, like Kofifi or whatever it was, like, lol, wait, yeah, that's a complete, or like when he bought all that McDonald's, complete distraction.
Regardless,
Distraction.
you have strong feelings about him. Yeah. And as long as you have those strong feelings, you're kind of doing what he wants.
I mean, I wouldn't put that on Cena. That's just kind of wrestling in general. That whole, like, you get a reaction one way or another and you succeed.
Well, it seems like really what happened is that the entire world is now professional wrestling.
Yes.
Whereas up until like the mid 2000s, it was only professional wrestling was wrestling.
Also, and into the 2000s, you had a much more present vocal crowd that played a much more direct, palpable role in the matches. So you started getting these dueling chants, let's go Cena, Cena sucks, that you hadn't really heard as clearly before for earlier wrestlers, even when there was that split in the audience.
And, I think that, when there's been a lot of ink spilled over the things that, Trump has learned from professional wrestling. But I think the main thing is the weaponization of heat. Mm-hmm. I don't think I've ever seen a politician, because the concept of heat in wrestling seems like it would be anathema to a politician, right? Because every politician who's ever lived, the goal is to get people to like you, to get people to believe you, whether you're doing that because you genuinely believe in your vision for the future or because you're a narcissistic sociopath, or most of the time it's just some combination of the two. Like, it's always been about something positive. And he's really the first politician I can think of. Well, there's an argument to be made that Pat Buchanan paved this road.
Andrew Jackson.
And then, that's the thing. The only people that hated Andrew Jackson were the people that the rest of the populace hated. Like, in terms of people who were voting for Andrew Jackson.
The other thing is we have the internet, and specifically social media now, where everyone's hate can be broadcast at all times to everyone else.
And not only broadcast but also, like, how many times have I seen on Twitter people retweeting other guys? They're like, oh, I can't believe, like, this guy said something so fucking stupid. Let me retweet him to all of my followers so they can also hear this thing that the guy's saying and he can get views. And it's so, you know what I mean? Like, and the concept of hate listening, which to me seems like an exhausting thing that who has time for. But if I was 19 in 2020, like, God knows what I would be doing with my time and what I would be doing on social media. Holy shit.
Yeah, CNN broadcast these uninterrupted Trump rallies during the 2016 electoral season. And with, I guess, under the idea of, oh, look at this asshole, look at this horrible shit he's doing. But in doing so, they made him visible to millions of people who ended up voting for him.
Well, they kept broadcasting it because it got good ratings.
Yeah. And they keep hating on him as vociferously as possible because it gets good ratings. And it's like this manufactured rivalry to get people's attention and serve everyone involved in the rivalry's interests, which is the basis of pro wrestling.
So, Andy Kaufman understood what heat was, and he tried to do that for most of his comedy career with mixed results. He, later in his career, one of the times he appeared on Saturday Night Live, well after he had been an established antagonist, he wanted them to do a poll say, we're going to ban Andy Kaufman unless people vote to have him stay. And he thought people would vote to have him stay, and they didn't. They voted to keep him banned from Saturday Night Live because all he would do was come out and antagonize people. And it's a great act, but, people generally won't vote for the villain.
Well, and this gets back to Cena in a way that to me, one of the most interesting things so far learning about wrestling has been trying to perceive what is the logical extent of heat. Like, at what point will heat turn from people passionately consuming a wrestler and watching them because they hate them to just to just not fucking caring anymore?
We gotta do an episode. We gotta find some matches about like bad heat compared to good heat to show Evan.
X-Pac.
Yeah, I was gonna say, somebody once described this to me as X-Pac heat.
So there was a while there in the early 2000s where the wrestler X-Pac would come out and people would boo him. But not like, it was very clear that as opposed to other wrestlers that were booed because they were good villains, people were just tired of seeing X-Pac on television. They were just disappointed
X-Pac showed up, yeah.
Yeah, they didn't want him there. They didn't like him. People came back around to him eventually.
There's also a slightly different type of heat called the Rob Conway pop. But that's not heat. That's like what Sylvan did in the Royal Rumble that we talked about, where it was like...
Strangely enough, one of Conway's tag team partners.
Yeah, all of Law Resistance was another time, but like it's with that feeling when like they don't like or hate you literally vacuum the sound out of the audience. Like,
you might as well not have come out.
I mean, there's also, I think it matters a lot that there is a good foil for the heat, that you have a strong baby face that the people are going to get into, or at least someone interesting on the other side. So I think it helped Cena that he regularly had opponents who, whether they were programmed as the heel or the face or whatever, the crowd was invested in them.
Edge
was one, Rob Van Dam,
Punk,
CM Punk, so that the crowd had someone to cheer for one way or the other. Whereas I think one of the big problems with a guy like Roman Reigns is that most of his opponents weren't any more interesting than he was, or at least the crowd didn't have a reason to get behind them. And even more recently, Baron Corbin, I think, is a great heel in getting people to dislike him. The problem is he has no baby faces who you want to see beat him up.
So let me try and explain the Cena heat properly in a logic, because I've thought about this a lot, especially since we are re-recording this episode.
Me.
I'm so sorry, guys.
Should I mention what the matches are since we haven't done that yet?
Well, once, because this is a good topic. Once I'm done with the Cena heat, then we'll get right into the matches. But so Cena comes out in almost all of his appearances, and he gets a tremendous reaction. He is super charismatic, whether you like him or you don't like him, or if you don't like or like his act. The people, but it's not random. There are specific groups of people that like him and specific groups of people that don't. And there are exceptions to all of these. But generally, the hardcore wrestling fans, who also happen to mostly be like middle-class white guys who have had nothing to do but watch wrestling for, decades, they all really don't like him because he doesn't fit their ideals of either like strong style or the technical wizardry of like a guy like Chris Benoit had, or the aerial tactics of, Rey Mysterio. He doesn't have the interesting charisma of Eddie Guerrero. He's just a big smiling babyface meathead guy who does basic moves and wins. So the people that
covered in merch, covered in advertising,
colorful merch.
The people who cheer John Cena primarily were the kids who just want to have a good guy to look up to, and by the way, buy all that merch. And women who
just want to have a good guy to look at.
Well, that's definitely a big part of it.
I'm not personally attracted to John Cena that much. Like, I don't think he's ugly, but he has a look that middle American women love.
Right. It's kind of like Matt Damon.
He does look a little like Matt Damon. And yeah, women do like to come, just like, men will come and see like the sexy bikini contest. You fill an arena with women. If there's a hunky guy they can get behind. But it's not even just that. A lot of the women who are wrestling fans aren't nearly as cynical as the men who are wrestling fans. So they're not just going to reject the good guy that's presented to them. And they won't like the bad guy who's been sleazy on TV. They're not going to idolize Randy Orton for being a stoic asshole the way guys are, because stoic assholes have treated them horribly their whole lives.
My general observations about Cena across all the matches that we've watched is I right away understood why he is, in like probably the top 5 most popular wrestlers who ever lived.
Yep.
He plays to the back of the audience in an expert way.
Yes.
Everything he does is broadcast very clearly. I bet you could sit in the cheap, maybe not like the cheap seats, but like I bet you could sit pretty far away and make out the expression on his face.
Yeah, one of the
Based on, and even if you can't see his actual face, you know what the expression on his face is by looking at the rest of his body.
Yeah, he and like the way that he. Like all like his movements, especially whenever he does his whatever the version of hulking up is or something, like when he's like getting ready.
It's not quite as obvious as Hogan's dance that he does, but he does the same thing.
And it's a very specific kind of physicality that like it's not even like it's not particularly graceful. It's not.
No, he's clunky.
It's not as like strong as some other guys, but it is very distinct and clear.
He looks like how an action figure kind of moves.
He absolutely does.
Know?
Yeah.
And a big part of what the point of him is to sell action figures,
which he has done.
And he does have. You talk about his appeal to women. I think he does really have kind of like an ideal combination of traits that I think a lot of people are attracted to, which is that he is clearly like a warm and kind guy with those puppy dog eyes who probably would do right by you, and he also can lift a truck.
Yeah.
If you've got a truck on you,
Yeah.
not a lot of guys leave the WWE and then have a lot of awful stuff to say about John Cena, the way like a lot of people have buried Hogan over the years, for example.
Like they tried to get Punk to talk bad on him, and Punk's like, no, John's great.
Right. Punk, when he left the WWE, did a couple of like scathing tell-all dirt shoot interviews, and fans were like salivating, like, John Cena, right, John? And he's like, I love working with John. John's a pro.
That's really.
I loved working with Kane. It's a night off. You go out and the fans are hot. Yeah, people are like, oh, I was pissed I had to wrestle Kane. No, I love Glenn. Glenn's a great wrestler. It's like, good, Punk. You know what you're talking about.
And that's Cena does seem to have like there's a lot of art. I'm sure there's a lot of artificiality to like the to his sort of white guy appropriating a rapper sort of character, and then also like all the military stuff and everything like that. But he does kind of exude this like sort of working man's wrestler. Like he shows up, he does the job, he's cool with everybody. You were telling me like in the Lost episode that he is kind of known as somebody who's never done steroids. He's just progressively gotten somewhat stronger as time goes on because he just hits the gym.
He has a degree in exercise science.
Really? I did not know that.
His body looked a bit more steroidy back in the UPW days when he was first starting out.
When he first started out, he was a bodybuilder, and he was on the natural bodybuilding circuit, and one of the reasons he became a wrestler instead was he couldn't compete in bodybuilding because he just wasn't on steroids. Everyone else was like, and he wouldn't say that. He would just be like, oh, even in natural, like my natural body can't get as big and cut as these other guys. And it's like, right, because you aren't on the gas. You aren't unnaturally huge. And he's comfortable with the fact that a lot of people will always think he's on steroids. And he's like, well, you can look at my exercise progression and it goes up like this, like it's supposed to if you're consistent with it. But people don't want to hear that. They just look at me and they want to think, oh, he's on the gas. Whatever. And he's very secure in himself. Right now, he's stepped aside voluntarily to let everyone else go because he wants to see what he's in the movies. And people are asking him, are you going to have a match at WrestleMania? And he said, well, if they come to me with a really good idea, but I'm not angling for one. There's all these guys on the road who were trying to get on WrestleMania all year, and I wasn't. So I'd feel, unless it's a really good idea, I'd feel bad taking 20 minutes away from one of them.
All right, let's dive into the matches.
All right, what matches do we got today, Professor?
All right, so first we've got John Cena versus Brock Lesnar from Extreme Rules 2012 in an Extreme Rules match.
That's when there are lots of extra rules, right?
No, the opposite of that.
That's
It's
disappointing.
a bit of a misnomer.
I thought it would be great. It's like, okay, to be eliminated, you have to go out between the second and the third rope after the guy has done his finisher. But you can use chairs, but they can only be this brand of chairs. You have to be able to take take the chairs away from the announcer and use those chairs.
What,
I
do you
think that-
this is TNA. Yeah. We have the same idea. right?
You can use the Spanish announce table, but not the American announce table.
USA.
I think there's one match we've watched so far where the American announce table gets destroyed and not the Spanish announcers,
God.
and I was like, that must have been nice that night.
That is a long-term run, like decades
Yeah.
long running gag in the WWE that they always go for the Spanish announce table first.
I think that the tag team, the SAT, Joel and Jose Maximo, they called themselves the SAT, which is the acronym for Spanish Announce Team.
Yeah.
In tribute to the often abused Spanish announcers.
And what were the other matches we got?
So then we've got John Cena defending the WWE Championship against the Great Khali
boy.
at Judgment Day 2007.
Oh boy.
And then finally, the match I chose as the bad match, because it really sticks out in my mind, even though it was just a random episode of Monday Night Raw, specifically the September 28th, 2009 episode of Raw, was a gauntlet match with John Cena taking on first Chris Jericho, then The Big Show, and then Randy Orton.
That match insulted my intelligence. We'll get to it.
Yeah, I was.
Everybody
upset.
involved looked like an idiot.
I feel like Great Khali should insult my intelligence, but instead I just love him for some reason.
Well, no, and I felt like I understood what was happening in that match and the mistakes that people made. Like, there was nothing in that match that upset me outside of somebody deciding that Great Khali was ready for prime time.
Yeah. I mean, I think the reason why we chose that match was because it's a great example of how John Cena was able to carry just about anybody to a good match.
Because
Or at
that's
least
a
a
good
decent
Khali
match.
match.
Yeah.
Think about that, Evan. That's a good Khali
That
match.
is disturbing.
Right.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I like
It's
to
about as good as it
describe.
gets.
I like to describe the Great Khali, and I don't think we're going to go on too much about this match, so let's do it first. I like to describe the Great Khali as like the swinging fiery blades in the dungeons of Super Mario Brothers. Like, they will kill you if you come in contact with them. But once you figure out, like, they're slow, you can jump over them and move on.
He does look like a guy who anybody could win a fight with him by just running up and punching him in the dick and running away before he could get them, and just doing that a bunch of
His
times.
knees don't bend.
If he falls over, he's down. Good luck. Like, it's going to take him so long to get back up. A
He did kind of kill a guy in training.
little bit.
He did. It wasn't really his
It was
fault.
accidental.
But, you
He
know.
powerbombed the guy, and he was clearly concussed, and then the trainer was like, do it again. And then the guy was dead.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
That's
Wow.
I would put the blame on that firmly on the trainer.
Yeah,
Who's
same.
Oh,
like,
yes. 100%.
shake it off. You know, luckily those attitudes in wrestling have been changing a lot since those
You know,
days.
Khali is a trainer himself now. He has his own
That's
school.
terrifying.
Well, they just announced that 2 of his 7-foot-tall Indian trainees are at the newest Performance Center tryout because he trains people in India now. Because he's originally from, you know, I don't know if you could tell.
He's actually a Punjabi prison guard.
Yeah.
Or he was
That-
before he became a wrestler.
Yeah,
That
he
tracks.
has like some form of gigantism, right?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. I don't think you get above 7 feet without, like, a pituitary problem.
Also just like the proportions on his face and
Yeah.
stuff.
So, Betsy, there was one thing that insulted my intelligence about this match.
Yes.
And it's something we've talked about before. So part of the story of the match is that the Great Khali had stolen the championship belt, right? He was not
right.
actually the champion, even though he entered with the belt, but they refused to call it the belt, so they idiotically say, Khali has Cena's championship.
Belt.
Why would they not call it the belt?
Because it's not a belt, it's a championship. A belt holds up your pants. Apparently,
But
that's Vince McMahon's attitude.
Because I feel like a championship is more like a concept, right? Like it's
Yeah.
not like a
Right.
physical thing, or it's an event.
But I
Sure.
think Vince thinks that calling it a belt like denigrates it to sort of an ordinary object.
Yeah.
I just love that this is what denigrates the product
Right,
for
that's what it's
in
really
Vince
about.
McMahon's mind.
They're not wrestlers, they're superstars, you know? They're not house shows, they're live events.
The fact that Great Khali is 420 pounds does kind of make me want to see him fight a guy who's 69 pounds. But that would probably be sad. That would be
a child.
Yeah.
So on him being Indian, so his promo is in Punjabi. And this is definitely, trying to fire up some racist instincts in people. He's yelling at me in foreign. I don't like that.
I still approve when they let people whose first language is something else just do a promo in that language. It's much more effective.
Oh, always better.
But this is definitely for heat.
Yes.
And he's got Ranjan Singh as his manager. He was actually one of the writers at the time. But I think the whole way that they set up the video package, I mean, it is Judgment Day, but I think the Christian imagery is supposed to be juxtaposed with his foreignness and his Oriental heathenism.
The giant from the forbidden lands of the Orient. Yeah, totally has that kind of vibe.
Man, when he body slammed Cena, it was a little scary. You could see Cena have to turn himself at the last second.
Oh yeah.
There was a second. I think the commenters even mention it. Like there's a time when he throws Cena to the ground, and it looks like he's dropping him directly onto his head.
Yeah,
We're
JR
thinking
says
the same thing.
Okay,
yeah.
JR says, I think he's trying to spike him there. But also on this whole Orientalism or whatever, JR says, this human being, and I use that term somewhat loosely.
Oy.
Right? They're really...
And I get he's supposed to mean he's a monster, but that's not what it really comes off as.
No, I've never heard them question the humanity of the Big Show, right? Like that's who is
Not really.
No, they
almost as
portray
large.
him as a family man at times.
Yeah.
Yes.
They do question Brock Lesnar's humanity, but in a different way.
Well, that's his character. Well, the same thing with
Right.
The Undertaker.
Yeah, the
that's
beast, Brock Lesnar. Yeah.
I will say for the Brock Lesnar match, it starts and somebody holds up a sign that says Bork Laser. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all it is. I love that.
Bork Laser. That was a popular nickname around the internet for him for a little while, just for exactly the reasons you're thinking. It sounds great.
Man,
This was Lesnar's first WWE match in years. He had left after wrestling Bill Goldberg, a match I'm sure we're never gonna watch again. What a horror. Anyway, he left after facing Bill Goldberg. He had a few matches in Japan. He joined the UFC, won the UFC Heavyweight Championship, left the UFC, and came back. So this was a really big deal. He showed up on Raw one night and just murked Cena.
And they're billing him as the new face of WWE, which in a lot of ways he did become.
Yes.
At this point, he's clearly by far the top guy. I mean, now, as we're recording this. And what we get in this match is a level of violence that fans had not seen for a long time, and in some ways haven't really seen since in a WWE ring.
Did you?
the reffing in this match is both great and hilarious in so many ways, because Charles Robinson goes down first. He gets hit. How does he go down the first time? He gets hit by someone running or something, and then he just flops to the ground and just rolls out like a fucking beached fish, and then stops moving, and then there's a solid 5 to 10 minutes where there's no refs, and they're all in the back cutting up a straw and putting him draw straws for who has to go out there and deal with with which of us has to go out and deal with Brock Lesnar. Here comes John Cone, who hadn't been around long at the time, but by now is one of their head officials, would you say, right?
Oh yeah,
he's one of the head officials.
He's got
on
tenure.
Raw. Yeah, but at this point he'd only been with the company 1 or 2 years. This young I'm here to help. 1, 2, it was 2. Ow.
Right. Then Lesnar just clotheslines him into oblivion.
And then Charles Robinson comes back in again.
But before he comes back in, Lesnar picks him up by his belt.
Yeah.
He totally planks
Not
in the
his
air.
championship.
No,
and you see a couple other refs run in and start helping Cone, looking at the ring I'm not going to do it. Are you doing? Nah, man, I'm not getting in there. Nah, man, he just punches guys.
Well, and then Charles Robinson comes in, and Brock Lesnar.
Back too.
Brock Lesnar picks up John Cena and F5s John Cena directly into Charles Robinson.
Who once again flops on the ground out of the ring like a fish perfectly.
When he finally makes the 3 count at the end, he's nowhere near their Cena's or Lesnar's shoulders.
No, he's not. But it works because he's so barely conscious and just wants this fucking match over with.
Exactly.
So John Cena was able to negotiate the Great Khali to the mat and put on his hold and win. John Cena, after the violent onslaught of Brock Lesnar, was managed to give Brock Lesnar his, FU, or I guess it was the attitude adjustment by then, the AA, onto the stairs and pin him. This was one of the things that infuriated people about John Cena, is that he would just win too much.
We'll get into that a little bit more with the bad
yeah.
match too, especially. But there's actually a sign.
Yeah.
During the bad match, I noticed in the crowd that says "We've seen a little too much,"
Yeah.
which really encapsulates it really well. But
Oh no, I was just saying I do like how and this plays into Cena's value as a heel. Is that from what I could tell watching the video package before, the story of this match is that Brock Lesnar wanted to hurt John Cena because he doesn't like him.
Yes.
wait, so John Cena is not a heel.
No, well,
I mean, for me, he is personally.
Okay.
So maybe the wrestling world views him differently. I cannot view John Cena as anything but a
this
heel.
match,
I'd like
at
to
least
say,
in this-
at this time period, John Cena was the top babyface and the top heel.
Right, yeah. But, I mean, the way the match works, Lesnar is the one killing him the whole match. Cena is the one who makes the miraculous comeback at the end and that sort of thing. So at least in terms of how wrestling stories work, Cena is programmed as the babyface in this match.
I guess outside of my own personal distaste, it seemed like the appeal of the match was that people wanted to see somebody beat the shit out of John Cena.
Yeah.
And Brock
Yeah.
Lesnar is particularly good at hurting people.
Though you'll notice in both these matches, the Brock and Khali, the crowd goes nuts for Cena's comeback.
Yeah.
They
Well, Cena
always-
knows when to do it and how.
And he got the crowd behind him in the Brock match. So, Brock brutalizes him for the entire match. At the beginning, he hits him with these elbow strikes that are clearly designed to bust Cena open hard way, and they do it. Cena's bleeding out the side of his head. Unlike the match between Brock and Daniel Bryan, Cena does try to fight back the whole time, which helps get the crowd behind him because he's trying. And then, I see this match really as the battle between like real fighting and sports entertainment. And as much as the crowd might want to see Cena get beat up, as much as they might be interested in Brock because he's a real fighter, they are wrestling fans. And in the end, sports entertainment prevailed. When Lesnar was just beating on him, he could have killed him, but he didn't have a ref to count the fall. Then he tried to get fancy with the stairs, and the stairs have often been Lesnar's undoing.
He almost dropped those stairs on John Cone. He lifted them over his head, and then you could see his hand be like, "Oh no, I can't! This is not where I have my muscles under the stairs. My wrist is gonna." And he steadies it and gets it in the ring.
He goes for this silly, jumping off the stairs dive into Cena on the apron, which goes horribly wrong.
Falls right out of the ring.
And that's what ends up losing him the match in the end. And I think this is, there's a couple reasons I think why Lesnar lost this match, despite the fact that it was his big return. And one of them was that I think Vince wanted to put sports entertainment over real fighting. The other reason I think is because he still didn't trust Lesnar long term. And before they were going to push Lesnar to the moon, they wanted to make sure he was good with losing.
Yeah, he was going to do business.
Also, the third reason is that they were still setting up Cena to beat The Rock at the next WrestleMania.
What does "you can't see me" mean?
It means you can't see him.
I mean,
moving on.
It could mean a few different things. It's a battle rap phrase. It essentially means I'm too quick and sharp for you. You're not even gonna see me beat you.
Okay.
Or think if you see a anime sword fighter Twitch, and then something falls to pieces, you can't even see him do his moves.
Okay, all right.
There's a couple layers. I think another layer of it is you can't see where I'm coming from. You don't know what my strategy is. You think I'm one thing,
But you can't see
But you
me.
can't really see the real me underneath, that's going to beat you.
Well, that's it. It seems like he plays with this sort of whole concept of authenticity. I mean, which all of wrestling does that. I think plays with the concept of authenticity. But for him especially, it seems weird because it seems like he is not an authentic person. Even that his character is sort of a character of an inauthentic person. Not John Cena himself, but John Cena, the character,
Well, he's a
I don't know, I
big
guess
shill.
interesting. Yeah.
Right.
He's a big shill. That's a very good way to put it. He, like so many wrestling greats, is primarily just wants to make the most money for the company and for himself. And when you're the one in the company making the most money, you can concentrate on making the company the most money. And so he does. And he found that the thing that worked the best with that is this character doing it this way. He can put out the same merch in a different color every year for a decade. And a new crop of kids will get into him.
And you see these kids laden with like 10 pieces of merch each. Yeah. They've got a shirt, they've got a chain, they've got wristbands, they've got headbands. There's the hats. There's just 2 kids in the front row during the Lesnar match, and Lesnar is just brutalizing Cena in front of him, and the parents are just totally thrilled with it. They're just laughing.
So tired of this John Cena motherfucker.
But the little kids are, God, what are they learning? Watching John Cena
that
get
there
beat
are
in
no
front of them.
heroes. That's what they're learning. It's an important lesson.
But like for all the people that give
Just
John
show them
Cena,
Watchmen.
John Cena and his character shit, like he's the one that would draw people to the arenas. People will come specifically to see him. Betsy and I went to a show in Philadelphia once, right?
John Cena.
Right, and it was John Cena versus Rusev was not the main event. It was the match before the main event.
This was a battleground. It was very.
It was a B-level pay-per-view.
It was a B-level pay-per-view that sold very poorly and had a Punjabi prison match with a cameo by the Great Khali.
Yeah. Anyway, the match before the main event was John Cena versus Rusev in like a flag match, a very like traditional "I'm American and you're not" kind of thing. And he'd had a couple of feuds with Rusev and had lost to him a few times. But the point I'm trying to make is there was a little kid right behind us, and when John Cena came out, he lost his mind.
The entire match.
And he was just screaming John Cena's name over and over again. John Cena, John Cena. And then when the John Cena match was over, that kid, his mother, and about 30% of the audience
left.
They just left. They didn't want to see the rest of the show. They wanted to see John Cena.
They didn't want to see Jinder Mahal. Oh
and
my God,
Randy
Jinder Mahal
Orton.
killed like ticket sales so bad.
In the Punjabi prison match, which is like a steel cage that's supposed to look like a bunch of giant bamboo sticks, and then surrounding it is a bigger cage made of what looks. You can't see the ring in the arena much, nor on television. It's a disaster. That's another story.
You also got to think about this stuff internationally, and how these superstars are presented internationally. So, my ex-girlfriend was Albanian, is Albanian, and I went to Albania.
She did not stop being
She did
Albanian
not
after
stop
you guys
being
broke.
Albanian.
It wasn't like you guys broke up and she was like, "Oh, actually, I've been Polish this whole time."
I had a girlfriend who's Albanian, and went to Albania, and her little cousins, they knew about wrestling. They hadn't seen a lot. I think what they saw on TV in Albania was like 4 or 5 years old that got broadcast there, and they only knew about 6 wrestlers, and one of them was John Cena. And if you're an American wrestling company and you want to project to the world your, heroic American wrestler archetype, you can't really do much better than John Cena.
Did Cena wrestle in Saudi Arabia?
Was he on the first one?
Maybe he was on the first one.
He hasn't been going to them. Like, he might have been on the first one. But I can't even
I feel like
remember.
no. I feel like he hasn't been on them.
And like they offer people like more money, even guys like Cena, like enough money that people will sell their morals to go.
Yeah,
and
blood money.
Yeah.
2 stray thoughts on Cena before we get into the terrible match.
Oh boy.
One, jorts and knee braces looked fucking stupid.
Yeah, people had always said to him, "Why don't you just wear trunks?" To which he opened an app on his phone and showed people his bank account and was like, "I don't think I'm doing anything wrong, buddy."
Yeah, no, I mean,
but no, I mean,
who
I
am I
agree
to
with
say?
you.
Yeah.
It looks fucking stupid.
And he has the sneakers, and back in the day, he'd have the retro high tops with the pumps.
Yeah.
And he'd pump his sneakers before doing the FU.
The kids loved it.
Do you remember the urban legend
kinda loved it,
about when the Nike pumps came out and people were pumping, and there was a story about a kid who went skateboarding with it and his foot fell off?
Oh no!
Did you guys? I don't think that was real. I think
No,
that was an
definitely
urban
not.
legend, but I was just wondering if that had
They
been-
didn't pump that tight. There was a little bladder of air that just
Yeah. And And then my other thought with Cena is I bet that kids movie that came out with him recently, and him and Keegan-Michael Key and their firefighters. Do you remember?
Paw Patrol?
And no, that would be amazing if John Cena was just like, guys, I'm on fucking Paw Patrol now.
I could see John
And
Cena
he
doing
became
Paw
like the
Patrol.
Steve of Blue's Clues, but
Yeah.
with Paw, where he's like the live action guy in Paw Patrol.
I could totally
Yeah.
see him being like the Steve from Blue's Clues too. I could totally.
If
see
you're a
that.
parent, don't show your kids Paw Patrol because that shit is just a breeding ground for fascism. Okay, and also all of those dogs are cops.
And Dalmatians have serious vision problems,
Yeah,
y'all.
yeah. Oh, let's watch my favorite show, Snitch Dogs. But anyway, he
So
was
they're
pig.
firefighters.
Anyway, he was
Boy,
like
they should be pigs, right?
he was in a no, yeah, there was like some movie that came out recently where like him and Keegan-Michael Key and a few other people, and I remember seeing the ad, and it was one of these ads where I'm like watching, I'm like, this movie looks fucking stupid, and then halfway through I'm like, oh, this is a movie for children. I'm
Right.
This is not. I'm being extremely judgmental. I bet it was good. I bet he
Yeah, I'm sure it was
kicks ass in a children's comedy film.
By the way, he left for a while after this match. He had just lost to The Rock at WrestleMania. Then the next pay-per-view, he wrestled Brock.
Right.
And then he left for a while, and then really only came back to fight The Rock again at the next WrestleMania, I think.
Yeah.
And I think he left to film the aforementioned Trainwreck with Amy Schumer.
Oh yeah. He was starting his movie career,
And he's
up.
pretty funny in that movie.
Yeah,
I bet he's a fucking solid comedic actor. Honestly, like I bet
he has
I-
very good timing.
I do think of that the GIF floating around. I don't know what match it's from, but I guess it's like a Christmas themed match. And there's
I know what you're talking about.
like a big like wrapped present near the ring, and everybody's like, John, go open the present. He like slowly goes over like, what is this? What could possibly be in this box? I don't understand. He unwraps the present, and then he takes that, and it's a chair.
And the look on his face.
Yeah, he just looks like, I'm gonna fucking hit a guy with this. It's
I'll tell
gonna be
you
great.
what. It's very early to say this, but let's do a holiday episode in December, and we can show you like that. That was an episode of Monday Night Raw where like Alberto Del Rio would always come out like in his car, except they had him come out and accidentally hit Santa Claus, who took a big bump off his car. And Del Rio was like freshly turned face, but they were like, "You're gonna be healed tonight." And it's not
I
like.
kind of remember this.
And he didn't come out and was like, yeah, screw Santa. He came out and was like, oh no. And then like all the baby faces like, what are we going to do? We're going to have to deal with this. And then Johnson is like, for Santa. And then they do that.
yeah.
It's fantastic.
I would love to do that and do a holiday theme match.
They have-
By the way, a really underrated comedic actor, I think. I mean, he's not much of a promo. When he talks, it's not that great. But in terms of his facial expressions, is Brock Lesnar.
Oh, and we are a couple days out from the 2020 Royal Rumble, and I personally think I didn't mind the Brock thing as a whole concept. I thought it went too many participants, like with him dominating the first half of the Rumble. Like I thought it went a few too many people, but like his facial expressions during all of it, like when other people were entering, like when he was dancing to MVP's music.
Or when he was suddenly really kind of concerned because Keith Lee was coming out.
Yeah.
Or like when he was happy to see Shelton Benjamin and then murdered him.
So in the match with Cena, he gets knocked out basically by Cena hitting him with the chain and then FUing him on the stairs, and then Cena pins him. And so he's kind of loopy at the end, and he stumbles out of the ring and is sort of swinging at shadows, and he gets close enough where a fan slaps him on the shoulder, and he rears back to almost take a swing at the fan in a really hilarious way, I thought.
So Evan, just for your information, the beginning of this Royal Rumble, which Evan didn't end up seeing, the gimmick was Brock was going to come out at number 1 as the WWE champion, and basically like, well, if he could win the Royal Rumble and beat everybody, he could just take WrestleMania off, right? And the first 13 guys after Brock came in, and Brock threw him out. And eventually the Rumble went on and Brock didn't win, but it's like it was infuriating for so many. It was just like, they're just going to do it, aren't they? Brock's just going to beat everybody and leave with the title again, isn't he?
That has to be getting old.
Yes.
Yes.
Right, like, because I
Yes.
like a lot of the Brock matches that we've watched, like, because I find Brock's character and his role in the WWE and his like force of nature, like neutrality to be really interesting.
It is.
But like, I mean, we've
It's
watched
been happening
matches
for years now.
That's the thing. We've watched matches with Brock that are over 10 years old.
And the problem is, it's in my personal opinion regarding wrestling, I feel Brock not being around on Raw, when like a lot of the time, is the main problem on Raw, because when he's doing the part-time dominant monster gimmick and he's not there, you don't have a main title on this flagship show, and the rest of the show just kind of goes to shit around it as they try to find something else to focus on.
At the same time, this is what makes him a heel. Like, the
No,
booking
absolutely.
is why you want to see someone beat him for the title. Because otherwise, I mean, they have a problem. They have a problem. They don't have big stars. They don't have anyone else like nearly on his level that they have around regularly. So what are they going to do? Just have him destroy another guy every single week? No, they keep him off TV, which serves the dual purpose of, one, keeping him as a special attraction, and two, infuriating the fans who think that he should be, which he really should, who think that there should be a champion on TV every week, which there should be ideally. But in this case, that's what makes the business.
No, there's layers to the whole thing. I get it, and I agree. But like, I think on the whole, it's very negative for Raw's product.
They don't have a reason for people to watch Raw then. They're just pissed the champion isn't on it.
Right.
And so they don't watch it.
But you know what?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I do.
Right.
But yeah, I don't want to watch 3 hours of Raw anyway every week.
Oh, God.
It's good. Raw nowadays, I feel like, is just supposed to be an advertisement for the WWE product that brings in people who are flipping through channels who don't know anything about wrestling anyway. So it doesn't really matter what they show. As long as they see people doing moves and maybe some characters that they find sort of entertaining, or maybe some absolutely horrible, objectionable shit that they, in their fucking reptilian-brained consciousness, think is cool, they'll fucking get into wrestling.
So let's get on to that last match.
Can I make one more observation
Fine,
Is it
John.
that-
about Raw?
Is it that the main thing Brock farms is fan resentment?
No, but that's a good point. So I ended up actually watching Raw this week because I wanted to see what they were going to do with Edge. I liked Edge coming out of the Rumble. That was great. And to your point about it being for people flipping the channels, they must have played Edge's theme music 25 times during Raw. They played it before and after every commercial break, and in the middle of every segment, they'd show like an Edge moment, and every time
That one face he made.
Yeah. That one face he made where he looks like he's about to cry, and then, like, you know, the greatest hits of his career. But they just kept playing, like, that trigger of the beginning of music. Edge is here. Edge is here.
Yeah, he
Edge
looks
is here.
like
That was
he's
the last thing on the show.
He looks like he's about to cry, because I'm pretty sure he was about to cry.
Oh, that was fantastic. I'm glad Edge is back. Anyway, yeah, so we can move on.
Speaking of how shitty Monday Night Raw can be, this gauntlet match. Now, first of all, Al Sharpton they had a guest host, a celebrity guest host for Raw every week at this time, and this week it was Al Sharpton. They were in Albany. I thought it was funny. He comes out and talks about bipartisan education reform. Him and Newt Gingrich are pushing for, and the crowd boos. They're like, "No, boo education." I mean, God knows what the bill actually was, and if it did it any good or harm.
No idea.
But it was great because Jericho is part of the promo, and he totally turns it to his heelish advantage by being like, "You people are booing education. What the hell is wrong with you?"
Jericho was doing an amazing gimmick at this point. Shocker, Jericho does something amazing at this point where he was very, very serious, like overwhelmingly like not fun. This was serious Jericho,
he said,
right?
Yeah, he said that he based the character largely on the villain in No Country for Old Men.
Oh, I could actually really see that.
Yeah.
That's it. So here, I have a couple observations about
Yeah.
Jericho that were largely the most positive things I felt about this match. One, if the win condition for this match was based on awesome footwear, it'd fucking be over in 1 second, because goddamn, those boots are amazing, especially compared to Cena's ratty ass sneakers. One question: at one point, Jericho gets Cena into a headlock, and the ref looks like he's checking for something.
So he's trying to make sure that the headlock is secure around the chin and not around the windpipe, because the choke is illegal, but the headlock is not.
But this is a problem in modern wrestling.
Yes.
Because that was always the case, right? You put someone in a sleeper hold, you're not choking them across the windpipe, you're pressing on their jugular and carotid artery to cut off the blood flow to their brain. But nowadays, because of the popularization of the rear naked choke in MMA, a lot of wrestlers use that as a finishing move, which is clearly a choke. So there's an inconsistency these days regarding choking and that sort of thing.
It's the same thing with like closed fist punches. It's like, is it illegal or not?
Right. No one's ever been disqualified for punching someone, yet it is ostensibly illegal.
Yeah.
So a little background before we get to the actual match of still on this episode of Raw. So earlier in the night, Chris Jericho and The Big Show, who are the unified tag team champions, a.k.a. Jeri-Show. They had both the Raw and SmackDown tag team titles. So they defend those titles against the team of Mark Henry and MVP earlier in the night in a really good match, actually, and a grueling match that, takes a lot out of Jericho and The Big Show. So you'd think, even though Cena's going up against 3 people later in the night, 2 of them have already had this tough match. So, it's at least kind of believable that Cena would be able to beat all 3 of them. That would be fine if they had told the story of the match in one way. Oh, yeah. That is not how they told the story in the match at all.
I didn't get the story of this match at all. I mean, I got it. It just didn't work.
Right. So I can launch into that, but I think you wanted to say something else before that, Evan.
Oh, no. It was one last little observation about Jericho. Maybe I just haven't noticed this with other wrestlers, but Jericho used his opponents or used other people's names in a way. I just heard him yelling Cena, come over here. Cena, what's your problem? Cena. And then saying when he was out of the match, he kept yelling no, Big Show, no, Big Show, what are you doing? And I
love your Jericho Muppet voice.
I don't know why I made him sound like that.
That's fine.
And I don't know, and maybe that's maybe that is a thing that other wrestlers do, but I just I actually often notice that people don't call each other by name in wrestling.
Jericho's generally very vocal in his matches too.
I really like that.
He likes calling people stupid idiot.
Yeah.
I like that.
It kind of reminded me, who else was really vocal that I liked was when we watched the Ronda Rousey matches.
Yeah.
Where she was just fucking yelling at people. And I'm like, how you don't see that very often.
I enjoy it. Some people think she's too vocal, but I like it.
Oh, I thought that was great.
It's fine. I think the fans in the stands don't really mind.
It's funny because in Jericho's early part of his career, especially when he was in Japan and he was just a pure white meat babyface, he'd yell out, "Come on, baby," to get the crowd riled up. Yeah. And that has become a kind of running joke with him ever since.
It's become known basically as the most generic thing you can shout to get the crowd to applaud. Although I was on a show once with Damian Demento, and he literally would go up to the second rope and say, "Would you applaud?" He did that about 6 times, and by the 3rd, the crowd was done with it.
But I think at Wrestle Kingdom this year, Naito even said, "Come on, baby," to Jericho.
I would definitely do a Jeb Bush-themed wrestler where I just asked the audience to clap.
Yeah, please clap.
And then, did you see that happened to Buttigieg too?
Yeah, it wasn't quite as severe,
but it was still pretty. It was the way he was like, "Come on, guys."
Really?
That's somebody who the Muppet voice is appropriate for.
Yes, that's true.
So we get to the fucking match, and first it's Cena against Jericho, and Jericho comes out selling the first match, I'm kind of beat up. But then it's not like Jericho beats down Cena for a while and Cena overcomes because Jericho has something taken out of him. No, Jericho beats him up, puts him in the walls of Jericho, gets intentionally disqualified.
I loved it.
Cena gets to the ropes, but Jericho doesn't break at 5.
Up till that, it made enough sense with the gauntlet match. He's got 2 more guys. I can get disqualified and just keep him in this hold. He's going to be nothing when my partner comes out.
Exactly, and he keeps him in the hold a long time.
Yeah.
And this is one of your tag team champions, one of the top wrestlers in the company, putting on his dreaded submission hold for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Then
didn't we watch a match a while ago where somebody also did that to Jerry Lawler?
Bret Hart.
Okay,
yeah.
right.
Yeah. So then the Big Show comes out. The fucking Big Show. 7 foot, 500 pounds. Also beats the shit out of John Cena. Cena starts to come back for a minute, but then Jericho interferes, causing another DQ, and they both beat the shit out of him.
They put Cena in Big Show's hold.
Was the Big Show? Every time I've seen, we got to do a Big Show episode because
We do, yeah.
He's a very interesting figure,
and he is one of, in terms of like comedic facial expressions, fucking one of the goddamn best. And
Everyone says he's like hilarious in real life.
Yeah.
Oh, that, I mean, like, we talked a while back. We talked about an episode where he was like laughing at Triple H because he got punched in the ear, and he's like, "Oh, you suck." But then there was in this, he looks so happy squeezing the life out of John Cena. And I normally think that bear hugs are stupid and boring, and this was so fucking great to watch because he's just like, "Oh yeah, I'm killing John Cena. This is so nice."
Well, this was the camel clutch, right?
Well, he put him in the bear hug
colossal
first.
clutch.
He put him in the bear hug first early in like his match with it. I think one of the problems with previous bear hugs you'd seen is that it's always between guys who are all really enormous. But the Big Show's literally twice John Cena's size.
So another really annoying thing, Michael Cole keeps saying this is the second of 3 gauntlet matches.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
It's not. It's the second of 3 matches within the gauntlet.
I nitpicked that so hard. Like, it's one gauntlet match.
It's like the difference between a game and a set in tennis.
I mean, in his defense, he's a dum-dum who says dumb things.
JR?
No, Michael Cole.
The
Okay,
worst-
I was going to defend JR.
The worst thing about it is he said it so many times that I'm almost sure it was a line that Vince kept feeding to him.
That's how you refer to it. Multiple gauntlet matches. One thing I noticed...
Like, make it sound like Cena's been through even more than he...
One thing I noticed, because this is a match on Raw, and usually we watch matches from like the big events, you can always tell in these main events when they hit the 11 o'clock hour, because there's an overrun on Raw. Not so much anymore, but like it goes from, it's 3 hours long, goes from 8 to like 11:10 or something. And exactly at 11, whatever's going on, Michael Cole just cuts in and goes, "You are watching Monday Night Raw, and this is the match that is happening, and this is why it's happening."
I know
for
you-
anyone flipping channels.
I know you wanted Slam Ball, but here's Raw.
Right.
I think the overrun was consistently the highest rated part of the show.
Well, it was during the Monday Night War, and then it was for the next 8 or 9 years. But for the last 10 years at least, the third hour has been the least watched hour. They go down. They used to go up. They go down now.
And then, like, does it just go up at 11 because people are like, "I'm getting ready to watch Burn Notice reruns"?
Yes,
or whatever.
actually, a
That's-
little
yeah.
bit. Oh, I remember for years they would advertise all those shows heavily on. Some of them looked good. I've never watched any of
I'm
them.
sure. I mean, Bruce
Yeah.
Campbell's in Burn Notice. How bad can it be?
How bad can it be?
So anyway, they beat the shit out of Cena. He sells it. It's like he's been beaten by 2 guys, which he has been. Orton comes out like, "Yeah, I'm just going to, pick the scraps or
It takes
whatever."
him 2 full verses of his theme song to get to the ring.
And Cena's still selling, still kind of afraid that Orton's going to beat him up. Then the Hell in the Cell comes down because they're promoting that Sunday Cena would defend the title against Orton in the Hell in a Cell. The cell starts to come down, and all of a sudden, Orton is afraid that he's locked in the cell with Cena.
And sorry.
And they sell it like the announcers even say, "Oh, Cena outsmarted Orton," as if, and I think the story of the match was this, getting the shit beaten out of him in this whole gauntlet match was just a ruse to get Orton alone in the cell with him, which makes no goddamn fucking sense.
No, and then Cena jumps up like he's fine after having
That's what really upset me the most, and that's kind of what plays back into the core issue with Cena of him simultaneously being the underdog and the guy who's expected to win, is that, like, for all that I fucking hate Hulk Hogan, like, Hogan would earn those, like, when he bounces the Hulk up. Like,
You know what was the worst part to me is the part where the match ended. There wasn't a finish. The match just ended.
They go up on top of the cell. Cena hits him with the FU on the top of the cell, and then they go off
they
the
play
air.
his music.
That's it.
there's, like, not even, like, a fucking pin or anything.
No, there's no
There's-
count.
he's-
It ends outside of the ring. They don't get counted out or anything. There's no. It is no. That is referred to as a no contest. There was no decision made.
And they didn't even say no contest.
Yeah, they didn't even say it, but I'm sure if you looked up the record of how the match, have you looked up the record of how the match ended online, like how it's listed listed in the record book. It would have to be considered no contest.
I'm sure. But this consistently happened on Monday Night Raw for a long period of time.
Consistently does.
It does it still? Do they still just go off the air with no finish?
Not as much as they used to. I think
They end with a lot of segments.
Yeah, they end with a lot of segments now.
And they were selling this pay-per-view match between Cena and Orton for the title, and why would you want to pay to see Orton challenge Cena for the title when Cena's fresh, when Cena just completely obliterated him after getting beaten up by two guys?
And it's like, once again, like I don't understand why he was able to bounce back. Like there's no reason. I would have absolutely bought a bounce back if they had established it, because I'm watching a fictional story, right? Like you just have to get there, and it's fine.
Like,
and
to your point about Hogan, like you get, like after all of this, he gets hit with the one move, and then his adrenaline kicks in, and he comes up, and you don't know if he can keep it up, but if he can beat the guy after this, he's got him. Nothing like that.
Just the lowering of the cell.
Yeah.
Is the only event that changes.
And why is Orton so terrified? Why would I want to see a guy who's scared of the champ challenge for the title?
Especially since he just came out with the understanding that Cena was beat up and he would beat him up more
Two guys
easily.
just beat him up so much that they both got disqualified.
Look, the whole match was bad and should feel bad.
Yes.
I mean, it really, because Orton especially seems, we haven't really gotten too much into Orton, but my feeling watching Randy Orton is that he's kind of an inhuman monster, right? Who's like super good at wrestling and is going to kill you.
They call him the Viper.
He's mad.
And
He's
so,
mad, yes.
and the fact that it turns on a dime. And he is experiencing such terror, like as if like Cena was just like, oh, like luckily I had these guns in my jorts the whole time, fucking coming for you.
Bang, 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 bang.
Which if that had been the case, fucking great, would have been the best match.
And like, how does it make guys like Jericho and the Big Show look like
terrible?
Your tag team champions?
Yeah.
None of their offense meant anything whatsoever.
And it eliminates, because there had been like Jericho holding him in the walls of Jericho for a really long time was so great.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's so Jericho looks like he's having a great time. The audience is loving it. The ref is like looks like he's trying to move a boulder, like like straining against Chris Jericho. Like it sets up all this great stuff, and like that's the core issue with Cena, is that it seems like as he is the one who is expected to win, that is always going to negate everything that comes before.
And it's punishing you as a viewer. You've sat through 3 hours of Raw watching this whole story, and none of it mattered.
Yeah.
Right. There wasn't even the finish you didn't want to see.
Right.
There wasn't a finish.
Right. Like they Hogan kind of did the whole, underdog that's also expected to win, but they kept coming up with insurmountable challenges for him. You can't have a Superman character be interesting unless you can come up with villains for that Superman that might be able to beat Superman.
Oddly enough, Orton did beat Cena at that pay-per-view.
Oh, yeah?
I'm pretty sure he did. Which it's like, oh, so then nothing we set up about this encounter means anything either, because something totally unrelated happened at the pay-per-view, and I'm going to double check that.
All I'm going to say is there was 3 places for clean finishes in that gauntlet match. DQ, and then whatever the fuck that was.
I gotta say, I'm really, really glad that we already recorded the premium episode that will be complementing this one. Normally we record the premium ones afterwards, because I don't ever want to fucking watch John Cena match again.
He's out of luck, isn't he?
I know he's inescapable. I know it'll happen.
Get to
and
him.
honestly, like there are times, like our premium episode that'll be dropping this Wednesday for our Patreon subscribers, $5 a month, you get a bonus episode every week.
Contract negotiations have stalled about the butt here.
Yeah,
everyone.
that's
Doc is really holding out for more money.
And also, I mean, I have to say it's a contradiction for me because I am so pro-union, and yet my co-hosts all unionized, and now like we're like in the middle of all these butt negotiations. It's complicated. We're gonna get into it later.
We'll get into it.
But
later.
we watched a match. We watched John Cena versus Rob Van Dam.
Oh yeah.
And like that was a great match and a great use of Cena's energy, and I like really enjoyed that. And it made like happens a lot with a lot of wrestling that I watch. Whenever I see a good version of all the shitty wrestling I've seen, it makes me retroactively more upset at all the bad wrestling because I'm like, well, you can do it. It is fucking possible.
Orton did win that Hell in a Cell match in 2009
Good.
Yeah.
with the punt kick.
Oh, with the punt kick.
A great evil weapon.
They don't let him do that anymore.
Yeah, just kick him right in the temple. He did it to Stephanie McMahon once.
Yeah.
Oh, that was one of his best.
The amount of head blows. It's remarkable that it took until like 2015 for the sports world to be like, maybe we should stop ramming everybody's head into stuff.
It was actually in about 07.
Well, in the WWE,
That's when it
but
started.
But
Yeah.
I'm sure the punt kick was perfectly safe.
Oh yeah, no, the punt kick was safe. That wasn't like that. It wasn't a real serious kick to the head that was worked.
It looked really good.
it wasn't like you left off the top rope onto your head onto somebody else's
No.
head.
Somebody would be up on all fours with their head sticking out. Then Orton would run at them and like with his instep kick somebody in the head who's then going with it and then selling it, which is a lot differently than I'll keep my hands at my sides and you bean me in the forehead with a chair as hard as you can. Hopefully we can dent the chair.
Speaking of which, speaking of finishes, so Cena puts Khali in that match in the STFU. I think it's still the STFU.
Yeah.
By this point,
In 2007.
Yeah, they had the
Yeah, it would
FU
be.
and the STFU, which would become the AA and the STF when they went PG, and I think 2009, 2010.
Something like that.
It was around
If
then.
you're-
I want to say it was like 08, 09.
I feel like F is the problematic letter if you're going PG, right?
Well,
the STF is the actual name of the move, the step over toe hold face lock.
Oh, okay.
Cena's version was the STFU.
he started implementing that as people started noting, hey, you don't do any moves or holds. Bet you can't do any of them. So he's like, well, here's this hold that everybody thinks is really cool, and it's my new primary finish, STFU. Thank you very much, and it worked.
Though
I get that.
his is like a sort of cartoony version of it.
It's the TV version.
It's very loose compared to hard versions of it, and really it's because kids emulate him. And people are like, well, how come you don't really cinch it in and pull the guy's head back by their neck? And it's like, well, 6-year-olds are going to put each other in this hold in the playground, and if they think you do it by just clasping your hands under the other guy's chin, great.
You know, I kind of wish more people who make violent entertainment for children put that kind of thought into
it's
into
true.
stuff.
So I think it's really impressive that he was able to get the hold on Khali to begin with. But Khali is so tall, I'm pretty sure one of his feet was under the ropes.
Oh, it definitely was.
And the
absolutely.
camera just makes sure the foot is not in the shot,
Right.
so that nobody sees, so that they wouldn't have to break the hold. I don't know if they played into that in order to secure the rematch.
I don't know. I think they just did the rematch.
Uh,
They wanted to milk what they could out of Khali before it became clear that he couldn't move.
Do we have final thoughts on John Cena?
If only.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Paw
no.
Patrol or Narcs,
John
everyone.
Cena sucks.
John Cena is a very interesting figure. He can be very polarizing. He's been on top for a very long time, and we're probably going to see more of him in the future in a variety of situations because he has put himself in a variety of situations. So, he's one of those guys that I like him more now that he's not really around, and I can go
Totally.
back and kind of appreciate his stuff when I'm not sitting there as a fan, like really hoping he'll lose, while at the same time understanding that was my role as a fan watching that at the first place.
He was absolutely infuriating for a time, especially
He
around
was.
2009, this last match we talked about, when it had been already 4 years into his big run, and there was still going to be another 3 or 4 or 5 before he'd finally start to disappear a little
Do you
bit.
remember the time once we went to the matches at the arena and John Cena was facing Kurt Angle and we were booing John Cena and some old people in the row behind us stopped us and were like, John Cena is a nice young man. And it's
I don't think I was there for that
man,
one.
you weren't
actually.
there for
Yeah,
that
I
one?
think you might have gone with Spoon to that
might
one.
have gone with Spoon.
Does
to
that
one.
happen a lot at wrestling shows where you're like boo and somebody's like hey?
Oh, all the time.
We used to antagonize the kids. we would cheer
as
for all of the
as
heels.
all society should.
Oh,
yes.
and they would get furious when they could not understand why we would boo their favorites and cheer the villains and stuff. I took great joy in doing
really,
that.
that just made the kids bigger wrestling fans because they
Absolutely.
became more hard in their resolve that John Cena will overcome, which he will.
It's interesting. I've met some older wrestling fans of like a couple of generations before us, and they always have really interesting complaints about current wrestling. Like, all the wrestling these days, they spend too much time outside of the ring and not enough time in the ring and stuff like that.
Back in 1906, when I watched Gotch and Hackenschmidt wrestle in a pit of mud in a crowd of 600,000 people.
I was at a nerd convention once and made the mistake of mentioning wrestling to one of the guys selling like spices and stuff, and he's like, "Really? Well, let me tell you for the next hour why Bob Backlund never should have lost the title." And I couldn't get away from him.
Can I just say, I know
Yeah,
that
you know who
I
I'm
know the
talking
exact
about.
guy
Yeah.
you're talking about, and you are lucky that the conversation he locked you into was at least related to the thing that you said to him. Because I once was like, I would like to purchase these spices from you, and he was like, I'm going to complain to you about local Connecticut politics
Oh,
for
no.
a while. And I was just like, and I just kept being like trying to hand him the money, like, please take the money so I can leave. And he's going, and then, like, you don't want to, like, just be like, oh, sir, I'm sorry, I'm going to need you to suck it while I leave. Because it's like, he's an older guy. He's been on the scene forever. That particular con,
But
like,
hard for
he's
him
been going,
to suck it while you leave.
And then, well,
Maybe not for Evan.
yeah.
Evan, when was it that you lived in Connecticut?
None
Never.
times. No, never. Oh, it's a terrible, terrible place. Fuck John Cena and Connecticut. This has been Contesting Wrestling.
And Boston, where
and
he's from.
fuck the
or,
Paw Patrol.
Massachusetts in general.
fuck the Paw Patrol. Eventually, John Cena's just going to roll up with the rest of the Paw Patrol when he comes back to Royal Rumble. I will not accept anybody saying that John Cena is not in Paw Patrol. That's canon. Now, follow us on Twitter @ContestingW. If you find this amusing, you get an extra episode a week on Patreon for $5 a month if you so desire.
We have a whole other episode on John Cena coming
Oh boy,
this week.
Good stuff.
That's patreon.com/contesting wrestling.
We are going to talk on that episode about the full dynamics of the Paw Patrol as a whole. So tune in if you want to hear that.
And stay tuned for our Paw Patrol podcast.
Right.
I mean, maybe when we start.
Pawing around.
I guess when we start doing the Contesting Wrestling movie club, I guess we can get some Paw Patrol episodes with Cena up in there. So that'll be happening
Once
soon.
it never happened.
This has been Contesting Wrestling. We love you. Thank you.